Most AI agencies lose their deal in the first 5 minutes when it comes to discovery. And what's more frustrating is they spend a majority of the time in the early stages of their AI agency journey trying to just get the discovery call booked in the first place. The stupid thing is, none of them really focus on getting educated on how to do discovery calls. And if you think about it, it's like having your amazing Lego box of whatever it is that you want to build, not having a manual and just trying to work it out, hoping at the end of it, you'll end up with what it is that you're intending to build. The likelihood is you're going to get frustrated, a bit confused, it's going to end up becoming a bit of a mess, and you're not going to get what you want. And for your client journey during a discovery call, it is exactly the same. My name's Andrew James. I've done 12 years of sales. I can tell you I've probably run through this discovery call framework about 500 to 600 times over the last year, full of coaching and getting AI agencies basically ready to do so. My job here today is to give you the most detailed and extensive and raw breakdown of a discovery call for your AI agency. I'll explain in other videos about how you're going to get to this stage, but the key things I want to run over is everything that you should need to know on how to run a discovery call. Let's break this down and go through it. Now, what I want to highlight to you is by doing this in the exact training, people that I've coached have gone all the way from like 13% to a 51% close rate on their discovery calls. And I'd also like to highlight the 49% that they got were people that weren't even right in the first place. And that's actually a positive thing that I want to start with, is that a good discovery call doesn't mean necessarily that you've guaranteed a sale. A good discovery call is actually just working out the client, seeing if there's a bit of synergy, can you actually work with each other, and then finding out everything possible about that client and where they're at so you can best serve them. How do you do that? Well, let me get into it and explain each step by step. So I've got 8 different stages that I want to run over with you. It's going to be quite extensive and detailed, but that's the point. I want you to have complete confidence in being able to basically run a discovery call from this. From my methodologies, 12 years of training, 1,000 AI agencies coached, 2 AI businesses that have done well, managed a couple of offers as well, over to 7 figures, but less about me. Let's get into this. So before I go into the 8 different stages, I want to actually talk about really the foundation and the fundamentals of things when it comes to a discovery call. The first thing I want to start with is something called state. State is heavily ignored sometimes, and it's so important. And what I mean by that is, I could give you the best framework in the world. I could give you a script by script breakdown of everything that you need to do. But if you're not in the right place emotionally to do a call, it's going to spill out all over the call, and your client and prospect's going to see it. If you're afraid about the solution or the offer that you're providing, you don't believe it actually provides value, in that case, they're going to feel that exactly the same. So getting yourself into the right state for a call is fundamentally important. How you say things and the tonality and everything else is secondary, but just where you are at mentally is literally probably the most important thing, more than anything else that I'm going to explain. The next thing I want to do, on top of, well, I guess just under state that I want to do, is how you present yourself. Try being face-to-face where possible. The problem with a lot of discovery calls is people do them and they overthink about every different thing apart from how they present themselves. Audio is key. If you can get a good mic, get a good mic. I've got a mic on this and I use it for my content, but I've also got a mic in my office. How we sound and if we are crisp in our voice shows that we care and we take, very much self-care in how we present ourselves. If we present ourselves well, imagine how the client feels about what we're going to do for them and how we're going to present ourselves in front of them, working with them as a client. Audio goes a long way, a lot more than camera. You don't need to buy a camera or anything like that for discovery calls. The ones that you've got on your laptops will be absolutely fine. Just make sure you've got them on. I've seen some discovery calls where people will turn them off. Obviously, the reason and the benefit of getting onto a discovery call is that face-to-face interaction where we can. So being really clear on how we, present ourselves is really important for it. You also don't need to put on your Sunday bests. Suits and ties actually sometimes can push people away in making it too formal. I like to try creating a living room environment where possible for my discovery calls, because that means that people are going to be a little bit more relaxed. They're going to be a little bit more interested in opening up and talking to me. It's not a pressured environment. It's going to be very much something a little bit more chill. And that's exactly what you want for a discovery call. The last thing I want to talk about, kind of as a fundamental and foundation when it comes to discovery calls, is always talk slower. Now, the reason why is we tend to speed up when we're nervous, and in client situations, we focus too much on the outcome. We focus too much on the benefit for us and not the benefit on the client. And because of that, we attach our own emotions to it, and that can actually cause us problems later down the line. One thing that I always like to do, take a quick breath before a call. Remove the pressure, remove the consequences. Like I said earlier on, a success of a discovery call isn't the fact they sign and pay. A success by a discovery call is, have I done everything I was meant to do in the discovery call? Did I not accept surface level answers and all of the things that I'm going to talk about in the 8 stages that I break down? So relax, remove the pressure. By being more, attached to the outcome, we're probably more likely to fail at getting the outcome. I'm pretty sure that's like Murphy's Law, or there's a law associated to it. So just realize that you being present in the moment, talking slow, and just trying to do what's best for the client is probably going to be the way you present yourself in the best possible way. So these are my 3 rules, I would say, as a good baseline foundation, really, in getting started. What I want to do now is just generally talk about how we're going to apply these into the first stage, and then run through the structure of the call. So as we go into the call, we're going to start here, and this is very much going to be setting the frame. What the frame is the frame is very much the agenda. What that's going to be is we're going to be very much setting the authority from the start. Authority isn't built by you talking louder, talking more, and pushing your presence on the call, which a lot of people will come in and try and do. Authority is built by you setting expectations from the start of what the call is going to involve, how the call is going to go, and what's going to be needed from you and from the person to deem the call as a success. I always like to think of it like going to the doctors or a solicitor. If you go to a doctor's and you just walked in and you just kept trying to talk at them, they're going to be very quick to push back at you. What doctors are really good at is they know they only have a really short period of time, like a 10-15 minute appointment. And they set the expectations really early on in that appointment of what is needed to be done. So I like to use a doctor frame at this point. I use the analogy of the doctors as well. So I typically start my meetings by saying, I say typically, funny enough, because it makes it sound like I've done more of them. But typically the way these calls are going to go is that I'm going to ask you some questions. Think of it like going to the doctors. They're going to ask questions. They're going to try and diagnose what's going on based off the answers that you give. If you give vague answers, they're not going to be able to help. However, if you give long answers, they're going to pull you back onto track. My job's just basically to ask you the questions, and then based on what you answer, I'll see if I can even help out and point you towards one of 3 different outcomes. Once I've said that, the client knows I'm in control of the call. The client can go on a spree, they can have a chat, they can do whatever they want, and I can pull them back by using that frame. If you miss the frame, doesn't make a difference for these remaining 8 steps. You're going to find it really difficult and sometimes confrontational to get authority back on the call. If you're someone who's doing calls already and you're realizing that people are just talking over you, or they're going on to tangents about things that are not related, they're talking about AI and what they're doing with AI and not the problems that they have. The problem is you're not controlling that frame enough. You're not pulling them back into what needs to happen on the call. The other thing that's really important on a frame that I like to get is I want to set expectations of time. Time is really important, more on a psychology thing than just anything else. It's more the point of, think about it like the human brain can only process so much information in a specific time. How many times have we sat in a meeting that was meant to maybe be like 30 minutes long and it goes on for 45 minutes, and because of that we're kind of a bit drained because we think it's gone on, there's just been too much information, people talking at me. I tend to make sure that the call doesn't last more than 45 minutes. If it goes over, that's fine. 50 minutes is okay. But typically the human brain, once we get to that point of 45 minutes, this is really all the good section where we're absorbing information. And this is where nothing's actually going in. So we want to try removing that as much as possible and focusing specifically on how we can deliver the most amount of value, but not stay in the room for too long, that the person starts losing focus and forgetting the important information that we've just spent 45 minutes collecting and delivering where possible. I'll explain later on about time stages and where you want to be at each point, but they want to be aware that it's 45 minutes of attention that I need. Remove all the distractions, get control of the frame where possible. This is also a really good time to call them out, and if they're not showing up, if their camera's off, ask them to put the camera on. Don't be so rude about it. Just say, look, can you see me? I can't see you. 9 times out of 10, someone will turn their camera on. Don't make a bigger deal of it as it is. Make sure the person's actually focused on it. They're not sat on their phone or scrolling. If they're not going to give you time and respect right now, think about them as a client. Think about when you get to the stage of pitching, all of these different things. Now, the last thing I want to do is talk about outcomes when it comes to the frame. Now, outcomes, basically, you're going to have 3 in the AI agency space that I typically go down. Number 1 is going to be very much a no-go. That's okay. And the more that you accept that not every person that you speak to is going to be right for you, the better it is that you're going to be detaching from your calls and accepting that actually it's sometimes not on you, it's on them. You can't help everyone. And the moment that you accept that, the better you are going to be at helping the people that you can actually help, the better questions you're going to ask. What you can't do though is cop out and realize, hey, I didn't get that sale, but I can't help everyone. It's really important that you do follow all of these 8 steps and you ask the questions and do a good level of discovery call so you can self-qualify whether that person was right or not. Objections are not a reason for basically just copping out and saying that they weren't right. You need to actually be able to identify the person based on whoever they are, whatever the client is, on if you can help them. And then at that stage, you can unqualify them if they're not right. The second route that I typically see people can do, and the one that I actually advise the most, is the audit. Now, the reason why is when you implement AI systems or do anything in a business to business environment, it's very difficult to kind of build trust and get a full understanding of everything you're going to be able to do in a 45-minute time period. What an audit is effectively inviting them to the second call, where you're going to be able to do a more detailed breakdown of exactly everything involved. If you click subscribe, I'm going to do a video similar to this on how I do AI audits as well, which is going to be an intensive breakdown that will be released soon. I'm filming it literally after this video. What that will be is that you can basically find out all of the things that you need to know about the company, but you've now got time rather than this discovery call is trying to find information, create value, overcome objections, first time probably meeting them. There's too many variables to try getting all of the information that you need to deliver on a solution. So therefore, going for an audit. The last one, which I would say is only kind of suitable to companies that have a product, they have a service, they've done it before, they've been around and they've already validated an idea, they already know what they're doing, is where you're kind of doing a product sale. I'll quickly run over this. You've got a service or you've got a product. A product is something similar to this bottle of water. Marks and Spencer's already know the costs. They know everything about this bottle of water, this nice sparkling bottle of water. They've already calculated everything. They know the cost of this cap. They know the cost of the automation machinery that screws this cap on after it's filled. They know delivery. They know everything, even to the cost of it getting into my hands. They could do a discovery call and sell this to me because they don't have to go off and do more research or anything. They can come up with a price right there and then for me, and I can choose to buy it. So I would try closing this person on a 1-call close if it was a product. However, I've just realized fizzed up sparkling water, not the best idea. However, if I'm not sure on pricing, I'm not confident, every day of the week, I'm going for a service, meaning I'm going for the audit. I'm going to try and find out more information so I can sell. Pricing and money and everything isn't made on discovery calls. The discovery call is where the sale is made, don't get me wrong. But if you want to work out on how much money you're going to make from a company, it comes from an audit. So don't avoid an audit, try to go for a quick sale on a one call close. It's sometimes better to try going down the route of an audit. But we'll come back to these points later on. It's just important to know as you're going through discovery, you need to be kind of weaving where you're kind of seeing this client and what position you're going to go in. But to be fair, majority of people shouldn't be thinking about selling. They should be thinking, I'm either not going to work with this client because they just don't qualify, or I'm going to go for the audit. Right, into the last stage steps of what I want from the frame. The last thing I want from the frame is something called a little micro check-in. Or another way of wording this is a micro commitment. The reason why is you've just laid out the rules. So if I kind of condense the frame again to what's happened, it's gone, hey, thanks for joining. Typically how these things work is I'm going to be asking you questions. Think about it like going to the doctors. Based on how you answer those questions, I'm going to try finding out if I can even help. And if that's something we can do, and demonstrate what we've done for other people as well. It's going to be about 45 minutes with me asking you questions initially. And at the end of it, I'll kind of point you in the right direction of where I can help out. Sounds good? Small little micro commitment goes a really long way. This micro commitment tells them that they've now agreed to the terms of my meeting. So now they're going to follow everything that I ask them to do and break down everything the way that I want them to do so. Without this micro commitment and you just charging on into discovery, they've not really agreed to stay on track. So if they do go off track and you try pulling them back to it, you might find they see that as confrontational, and that's not what you want at all in a discovery call. The point of a discovery call is that you're going to be starting to collaborate together. On to the next part then. So now we've got the frame, we've set the frame, we've done the most important with it, we've got kind of a commitment from them. I want to go into second stage. Now the second part of the call is literally the most important part of the entire conversation. And if you skip it, you're going to end up kind of backtracking and finding it really hard. What I'm talking about is discovery. Discovery is where you have to ask them questions to create a gap, and the gap you're going to use to basically pitch into them why they need to use you. Discovery is everything from trying to identify why they're there to trying to create urgency as well. If you try rushing through discovery, you're going to find that it's going to be harder to hold people accountable at the pitching stage. It's going to be harder to do follow-ups because you don't know what their motivations are. And it's going to be even really harder when you get to objection handling stage because you've got no kind of ammo, nothing to use against them that you didn't collect at the best and early stages right now in the call. Typically, you're going to be starting this literally like 3 minutes in. The frame shouldn't be taking too long. You want to be diving straight into it. And the first thing I want to do is I want to break ice. Remember, I want to make them feel like they are literally inside my living room. I want to make them feel like they are super relaxed. They've got nothing to be worried about. They are as calm as they can possibly be. The way I need to do that is I need to try finding a way of what led them to come to me in the first place and actually jump onto a discovery call. People don't just sit on discovery calls. No one just jumps onto Zoom meetings because they feel like it and they get out of bed. There is a level of curiosity from your outreach, from the connection or whatever you did beforehand that led them to this point. You want to find out what that is. If you think about it, what you're trying to do is identify what was it the very moment they said yes to this. I want to pull them back to that state as quickly as possible so they are in the room with me where they were right then. I don't want to try spending most of the call trying to get them back into that state. I want to do it as early as possible. So I'm going to typically be asking a question about what was it you heard or saw to attend the call. And people might find it a bit weird asking that question because you're sitting there going, well, I booked in the call. Why the hell am I going to ask them right now is what made them to do that. I know that because they booked on the call from the conversation with me on the outreach I did. The point is you're bringing them back into that state. You're making them vocalize it. Once it's vocalized, it now belongs in the meeting. You can use it. You can rely on it, you can lean on it. And it's going to be a really important thing that I keep bringing up throughout the whole discovery call, is we never assume. We want to bring all of the things that we're thinking and what they're potentially thinking into the conversation. Because in the conversation, it's basically like chess pieces. You can play with them if they're on the board. They're not on the board, can't really do anything with them. They're going to typically say from this a really quick response of something like, well, you basically told me to. Or they're going to come back with a really quick response of like, oh, I'm interested in. Two things typically happen at this stage. It's going to either be a story from them or a quick answer. This is really good information to collect. And you've got to remember, every time that someone gives you some information or answers a question, there's more layers to it pretty much that you can go down. Like I said, I want to be as detailed as possible in this, but I don't want to overcomplicate people. But if someone's given me a quick answer, I am already learning that maybe I haven't earned the trust yet and there is a little bit of resistance there. You might find with people that give a quick answer, you are getting, as I said, early stages. Earlier stages of resistance to them actually wanting to be on the call and involved in the process. Rather than try and walk over it and trying to avoid it and trying to like just generally tiptoe around the whole process, I want to just tackle it head on and try and find out what's up. So I'm going to see what they respond with. But early resistance, you've dealt with and you've probably seen before. Let me give you an example of early resistance. Tell me the price. Tell me what you do. Going into a story just being like, I only wanted to know. These here are all signals to me that they're just trying to get on the call and get off the call. They're just here for the information and that's it. No one's going to buy just off information. They're just window shopping. So I want to pull them and hold them accountable to that and just challenge them on that thought process right there. The way that I'm going to do this is not going combative with them with my language. I love using analogies. I love using common sense as like a middle ground between me and them. And I need them to be reframed in the fact that common sense is going to win and that my thought process is closer to common sense than them. If I just told them, hey, tell me the price, and I start talking about the price, they're off the call in 5 minutes because they will not see the value of the price and they're disappearing. If I just tell them what I do, I've lost all the value of trying to find out what they actually need to be able to pitch it in a way where it feels like a white glove solution. But again, we'll get back to these points later on. If I just say to them and accept, oh, they just want to know this one bit of information and they're going to go, you're never going to hear off them again. Trust me, that's going to be looking at the inbox, wondering what could have been. So it's important to kind of try and reframe this with a nice analogy. If it's someone who just wants to know the price, again, I'm going to take them to a third-party scenario, which they are very familiar with. Look, Mr. Person, do you drive a car? Yeah, I drive a car. When your car breaks down, you take it to the garage or do you fix it yourself? Well, I take it to the garage. When you drop it off at the garage, do they tell you how expensive the work's going to be? Or do they say, I need to run a bit of a diagnosis on it and we'll come back to you with the price and what's actually gone wrong and everything as well? No, they tell me that. They want me to kind of work out the pricing. Cool. This is exactly the same. I don't even know how much to charge you because I don't know how bad the problem is or if there's a problem at all. Hence why I just need to ask a couple of questions. Then based off that, I can help you out. I'm tackling this head on as early as possible to stop them spending the whole call sat there waiting for me to tell the price and pitch, but to start getting engaged in the fact that I'm trying to help them. That is the important thing. Same as if they just want me to tell them what to do. Same thing as the doctor analogy. Look, if you walked in and the doctor just gave you a prescription and said, hey, good day, off you go, would you really be confident the doctor's done a good job at due diligence in trying to identify what that is and if you need that and how to help out, basically? So yeah, I'm quite really quick on this point in just making sure that I'm nipping it in the bud on those people that are just trying to take control of the frame, maybe trying to dominate the call. On the other hand, it can also end up with your storytellers, people who just go into a long 5 minutes about them. You really want to grab those people and try and hold them into your questioning rather than them going on a tangent. Remember, focus is really important throughout the entire discovery call. And if they start pouring their focus away onto something else, it's going to be harder for you to pull it back. So don't mind interrupting people if they start going off on topics that you just don't need to know about. How you interrupt someone, just be polite. Literally just say their name and then go and ask them a question straight away. Because you've set the frame and because you've been the one very much from the start holding that authority, people aren't going to get offended. And don't think about it too much. You just generally will say the name, be like, really appreciate the detail, straight into the next question. If they want to go back on the point, that's fine. I go back to reminding them the frame. Look, we've only got 45 minutes and I really want to get to the points where I can help out in the best possible way. Then next question. No one's going to be offended. I've done too many of these calls. Not one person's called me out yet. And if they have, very quickly I've identified they're probably not right to get into business and work with in the first place. Once I've got this, I've now got the connection, I've now gained some early resistance, I've got a level of control. I want to find out what specifically they need help with. The reason I want to know this is because I'm trying to condense a huge amount of things into one. What is the problem? And they need to tell me the problem. Now, specifically is really important. I'm trying to make it that they are just telling me the one thing rather than the list. And if they start telling me the list, I'm just going to really call them out quickly on it and just say, look, sounds like there's a couple of different things. What's the one that you want solved right now? What's the one that needs to be solved today? So I'm really condensing, if you think about it, already all of their problems into my own funnel through 2 questions. The next question I like to ask after what specifically do you need help with is, what makes you feel like you need help with that in the first place? Again, I'm getting them to give me another layer behind the problem. Now, people typically that I've coached have said to me in the past, well, what happens if they're not problem aware and they're just doing some level of discovery? They're maybe not aware what AI can do. They're just doing some research into it and they feel like speaking to you. It's really important for you at this stage that you should be thinking, I need to be getting a problem from them that they're willing to pay money for. I'm not trying to do a window shopping activity of just telling them everything we do and then them picking out the catalog. I need to find out a problem that they're going to actually need that's not going to be a nice to have. Now, the way that I'm going to do this is just asking them questions with being really curious into their everyday. Everything about this section that I'm going to really break down is going to be about them, not me. So it's really important that during all of this exercise, I'm not focusing on what I can do or what I can provide or trying to provide a bias. If I present the problem, they're not going to be attached to it. If they present the problem and they vocalize it, they're going to be attached to it and it's going to mean something, and it's meaning that that is going to be the thing that they want to change. If you think about it, my follow-ups, everything afterwards is going to be so much easier because I'm basically just going to hold them accountable to that specific point that they mentioned. So cool, I've got now a good idea about the problem. I know what they feel, maybe they've been a bit vague on it, but they've told me why they feel like that's something that they need help on. I'm going to now try and get a time associated to it. I want to know, is this something that they just got out of bed this morning and they thought about? Or is this something that's been kind of ongoing in meetings? And I want to use language like this when I'm speaking to them because it's really important when we're speaking to business owners, they're making a decision based off logic, not feelings. So I'm going to ask them, when did you first notice this? I like throwing in a little bit on top of this as well, which is like, when did it first appear in a meeting? Again, I'm using their language now with them, and I'm trying to get them to track back to a thought process that they would remember now. It's harder for them just to kind of think about everything at the same time. Where if I talk about meetings, I'm now putting them in a situation where it's easier for their brain to process a specific time period and when things are being discussed. I also know that if it's not being brought up in meetings, they're not going to pay for it. So it's also me doing that extra layer of qualifying to see how important this is. So yeah, when did it first come up in a meeting? Once I've got this, I really want to hold on to it. I now have a time associated to the problem. You can see already the discovery is working in your favor if you're following this out. You're not rushing on to talk about you. You're getting a problem, you're getting a time associated to it, and you're trying to find out a little bit more about how long that problem has existed in that world. Soon I'm going to want to make it quantifiable and kind of put a number to it. But the last thing I want to do is really try and get an idea about how long it's been that they've been aware of it and the difference between that time to now. If you think about it, if it's a problem that's been up in meetings, say for the last year, but they've only ever had a meeting about trying to get it fixed over the last month, I would want to know that. I think about it like this way. If you go to a doctor and you say that you've had a back injury and you've had it for 6 months, the first question the doctor's going to ask is not going to be about the back injury. They're going to want to know about your thought process on why you've neglected it for 6 months and you're only starting to do something right now. That's going to give me more information than anything about the urgency of getting it fixed. So I really want to get a good understanding of why now, but I don't want to be as direct. So I'm going to ask a question saying, having been aware that this has been something for, say, the time period that they've said, what's led you to kind of do something right now and book on a call about this? The other thing that's going to happen is they're going to give me all the information of the things that they have tried. Oh, we did try recruiting someone to do that job and it didn't work out. We have looked into AI agencies and all this. All that information's gold, because at the end of the day, the reason they didn't do something before is going to be the same reason they didn't do something now. So the more information you can collect from them about this before you pitch, it's going to come really useful in a moment's time when I start breaking down everything such as pre-handling and objection handling and preventing them getting in their own way again. So I've got their time, I've got the problem, I've got what now? What now? Now, with the problem, the one thing I would say is I don't want vague answers. So I'm going to quickly check throughout the entire of this stage here is I want to make sure that I actually understand the problem to a level where they'll do something about it. And with that, I'm going to help by breaking down how I do this. So anyone who tells me a problem, such as leads, it could be time they're losing, it could be money, it could be anything. There's loads of different things, but 9 times out of 10, they typically come back to this. All of these different things I can actually associate a number with. Therefore, I can make the problem bigger and have a better understanding of them. Let me break down an example. Let's say that someone's doing a task that they don't want to be doing anymore, but they say that it's only taking them 1 hour a day. Now, on somebody that's earning, say, £50,000 a year, $50,000, whatever currency you want to use, what you won't realize is that 1 hour, they're aware of the actual cost to the business on that person doing that task. Very rarely do businesses actually look into the numbers of a task and associate it to a cost. I do another video about this where I go over it, about pricing and everything else. So if you click subscribe, I'll run through that for you. But my point being is, and I know this because I've got a calculator, I'm not some sort of maths wizard, trust me. I know that this is around kind of $26 or whatever currency you're working with. Let's stick with pounds for right now. This is around £26 per hour that they do, based on the person working a 40-hour week and 8 hours a day. Now, here's the thing. £26 over the space of a month is around about 600. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what it is, £600 is a lot of money just to be sat there, not doing anything on a task that could be automated. Now, I have a better understanding of the problem because I've actually attached a number to it. Businesses, they buy from logic. They buy from numbers on a spreadsheet. They buy from, this doesn't make sense. A lot of people who are business owners typically started their business because they're very much aware of investment and that they've got to put something in to get something back. No one really starts businesses with loads of money in the bank just to see it go. It's always deemed as an investment. So I want to make the decision-making process seem like an investment. How do I do that? I need the problem to have a number associated with it. So for this example, I now know this is worth £600 over the space of a month. Now, if I'm looking at £600 over the space of a month, I can do that over the space of a year, forward, but actually, equally as important, I can tell them about the past. And I can kind of explain to them that this is costing you 600 every single month. And over the space of, the last 10 months, you're looking at, what's it, 6,000 over the space of 12, 7,200. That's a huge amount of money for a business to spend on something that could be automated. And automatically, you're going to start getting a bit excited because you're going to start realizing that if I can provide a solution that, say, costs 2,000 for the entire year, it kind of comes a no-brainer for a business to make a decision in buying this. So asking questions, typically at this stage, when we're talking about the problem and when we're in discovery, I don't want to move on from this stage until I have a complete understanding of the problem and the numbers that are associated with it. Same with leads. You want to find out how much are they spending on leads? How much is that impacting them? You want to try connecting a number to the problem that they are saying, not you, and them getting an understanding of actually how big the problem is. Hormozy has a great line as well, which is like, stay in the pain, and the problem is the pain. So if you identify it, ask more questions on it, but do it from a consultative way. You're not trying to upset them by talking about the problem non-stop. You're trying to understand a deeper understanding about it. But by doing those extra layer of questions, trying to find out a little bit more about the monetary side of that problem, the impact of that problem, how someone's feeling about that problem, how much time and energy are they putting into that problem that they could put somewhere else. All of these things are going to make someone more motivated to spend money with you if you stay in this space. You rushing onto the sale and talking about yourself means that you're going to really miss out on the most valuable part of this entire sale, where they're going to be motivated to actually do something about it because they've spent 5-10 minutes talking about their problems and everything else. I typically try staying in this part for about 15 minutes. And I really want to highlight, this is where I'm going to stay majority of the time, because if they're paying for me to solve the problem, I need to be able to present it back to them as kind of like a journey. And this is going to be, this is where you are right now. This is right now, everything that you can see on here, this is their world. And I need to understand it in the best possible way, so therefore I can change their world to their future, because the transformation is going to be what they buy. The last bit before going into anything about me, I'm going to ask is, I want to know something, and this is called a kind of the pre-handling stage, is what has got in the way. If you want to make this stronger, associate the problem. Look, knowing that you've been aware of this problem for the last year, and knowing that actually the cost involved is, say, £600 every single month, what's got in the way of actually fixing this? Why is this problem still in the business? Really important question, because the excuse that they give you right now will be the same one they give at the end of the call. People don't change. Typically, the way a company makes decisions, the beliefs they have, the human behavior they have isn't going to change just because you present them a really good opportunity. They're going to have the same thoughts about money, the same thoughts about investment, the same concerns, the same problems and everything. So I want to try getting this out right now before I go into anything about what I can do. So the question I'm going to ask in this kind of pre-handling stage, which is where we fall into step number 3, is I want to try finding out what I said, what's going to be the excuse they're going to give me, what's the objections that they're going to throw out. Now, typically, most people will say nothing. Or they'll say they tried something, or they'll say they've looked into it. Now, if they've done nothing, that's a behavior problem. You want to call that out, because if they've done nothing now, why are they going to change? What's suddenly going to be about today that they pick up and they're going to do something about this? So I'm really trying to assess that and going, cool. You also want to realize that nothing isn't often the reason. It will be something else that's kind of got in the way that they're just not telling you. This typically will be money or time. And they're just not, they don't trust you enough yet in the conversation to invite you in to say, actually, we just haven't had the money to allocate this, or we just never have got round to it. But you're trying to push a bit of urgency. And again, by framing it in a way where you're explaining the problem, the cost of that problem, the impact that that's had, By framing it in that way, you're going to be able to get them to be a little bit more open and honest with you on it. But you want rather they tell you this now than tell you later down the line and pop out a surprise that you'll be unhappy with. I'm just wanting to collect this and challenge them on it now in a softer way. I'm trying to reframe them that way of thinking is not going to serve them. And I really want to kind of call them out going, what's different this time? What's different this time? It's quite a confrontation approach. So again, I'm going to try asking them in a bit more of a polite way. So if it's money, I'm going to sit there going, cool, well, look, if money was a problem then, what's kind of changed between now and then in the estimate of like, have you got more funds for this that you're actually wanting to allocate to get rid of that problem that's costing you £600 a month? And consistently reminding them of the impact of the problem if money's involved, because the only way that they're going to look at it is like through an investment. What people typically do at this stage is they'll come up with all these excuses. They'll try and kind of like worm their way out in coming up with an excuse of why they've not done something because they're embarrassed that they probably should have. They're now showing you their dirty laundry in some aspect of, look, they've got a problem here that they can't solve. The bit I'm trying to get is I want them to admit that they can't do it without me, because 9 times out of 10, the person who's done nothing has probably actually already tried. There was a stage where they probably tried doing their own ChatGPT thing. There was probably a stage where they tried doing their own stuff with AI and it didn't work out. So I'm now going to be able to sell my expertise and why they need me based on this stage. But I'm going to ask them as well. I'm going to sit there once they've said nothing and saying, out of curiosity, what stopped you from just doing this yourself? Do you notice already that the way that I've structured the call with this stage by the questions that I've asked? I've now got the problem, I'm aware of everything. I've got all the information before I really kind of challenge them on quite an aggressive question of saying that, why don't you just do this yourself? If you're sat there nervous going, well, if I ask them that, they're going to just suddenly start doing it themselves. They already have. I'm telling you right now, no one just jumps onto a call as their first step. They've already probably looked into doing it themselves. Like I put here, when they said they've tried, it's kind of connected to that. But tried also could be they tried another company. People, once they've tried other companies, typically have a good experience or a bad experience. Still, there's a reason that they're speaking to you. You have to remember that. If it was a good experience, you want to know, why did they not go back to them? Because realistically, it's a no-brainer. That's the first thing that you would do. And they're going to expose probably something with that company that they're looking to seek and find in yours. Remember, you've not said anything about you yet, so it's just collecting information that's going to be really useful. If it was a bad experience, they're also going to list all the things that they didn't like about that company. Now, some of them, you've got to remember, is they will always have a bias to the story in a negative way. They're always going to be pitching it in a way where maybe the company was the problem and they weren't the problem. First glass of water. Much needed. Right. They're always going to have a bias, as I said, about them being the problem, the company being the problem and not themselves. It's your job to kind of try and identify that, because you don't want to onboard a client that was an absolute pain in the ass. So try and find out what went wrong. A softener on this, because it can be quite a harsh question, is help me understand, what was it about that client that maybe didn't meet the expectations that you were wanting to, for you to kind of feel like this? It's a really kind of like an easier way of asking the question without confronting them on it, where they might not be willing to kind of give you the full details. But you need to understand, because you don't want to walk into the same point. Remember, we're talking about the problem of them solving that problem as well. Another one might be as well that they've spoken to people but not done anything. People will try and put this into the tried category. That's another area that they might match. Just deal with it the exact same way. Remember, was it money, time? You need to just ask more questions. Cool. What was it about them that didn't help me understand? What was it about them that didn't meet the expectations for you just to start working with them? The problem they give you now, they're going to give you at the end of the call. You're getting all this arsenal of information at the best time. The people that get better close rates, don't do objection handling at the end. They overcome the objections and at least collect the information about the objections before they pitch. Because then they can make a pitch about this, and then they can also call the person out against a pattern or a behavior when they're doing the close. As I said, I'll get into that with it. And then, as I said, the last stage is that they might just have looked into it, meaning like it might have been something that they have only really just started doing something about. I just generally want to know a time association on that, on it. The reason why is if someone has just got out of bed and decided to book a discovery call with you, it's going to be hard to get a commitment on them, especially if they've had the problem for a while and they're only doing something about it now. That's a pattern, that's a behavior, that's a lack of awareness of problem solving. There's probably a deeper meaning for people that do this, and it's not the fact they're not aware, it's the fact that they're probably trying to be tight with their money or their time. Again, if you want to sell your service in the best possible way, you want to call out the behavior and realize that that company, by having that thought process, is going to, not get the results and the outcomes that they want. They're paying you to be a consultant at this stage, but they're going to pay you to be a consultant. They're not paying you just to be a yes man and agree with everything. You've got to challenge the belief. You're the expert in this situation. You are the expert at solving that problem. You want to understand, first of all, and diagnose why the problem's there and how long's it been there for, before you just go in there with your solution. Cool. So I want to then next get to the next stage, which is going to be, I believe, number 4. Now, number 4 is going to be all about alignment. And what I mean by alignment is trying to get an idea of what it is exactly that they're wanting as a service. Now, I know you've kind of asked that question already before earlier in the call, but now you've got so much more information from this stage here. You've got an awareness of what the actual problem is and a good understanding of the time elements involved in the problem. I like thinking about this way, going, if I was sat in your corner, if I was actually already working in the office right there today alongside you, what would you be expecting of me to solve this problem? What would be your expectations of how you want to get this problem fixed and the service you want to have? How do you want this to work? What I'm trying to find is the signals that they're looking for as like the buying signals of what they're actually wanting in the service. So I'm going to sit there and go, what is it exactly that you need? This stage typically is more about trying to find 2 or 3 different ways that they're seeking you to be able to work. Now, a lot of companies will kind of want you to present the answers. Think about it like they've got a completely open opportunity. I make a joke of this just to lower the guard. I sit there thinking, imagine that I'm Tiger Woods and you're about to play a round of golf and I'm your caddy. The point is, you've got the best person at solving the problem, but you need to be able to ask the questions to Tiger. Putting myself up there with Tiger, nowhere near the standard. Not even close. What an ambitious statement to make. My point being is, I want them to be able to kind of unearth and kind of open up about what it is exactly that they want. It might sit there going, cool, we need this to be done by this specific date. So they might give me, for example, deadlines. Another thing that they might be wanting to do is tell me the budget allocations. We've got this amount that we need to spend for it. It might be that they want to talk about how they want to work. Well, look, we need communication points at these specific stages. But what you're not doing is acting stupid and kind of just playing yourself down. You might be able to prompt people with a little bit of responses, but you're just trying to find out what is exactly that they're wanting that they're going to be willing to pay for. Another way of doing this is also asking them what goals and outcomes. Now, I don't want to stay on this bit too long because I'm going to get into that in the next stage called vision. But the alignment stage is very much you trying to get from them what it is that they're going to be seeing that they want to solve this problem. How would it be looking like? The solution itself, not the problem solved. How would they want the solution to be solved? An analogy I'll give you just to help with this stage if you're struggling to think about it is say that I went to a PT and I said I want to get fit. I want to look like Chris Hemsworth. It's not going to happen. But my point being is, well, it's not going to happen. I believe for 30 seconds. Well, not even 30 seconds. I believe for 10 seconds there. My point being is they're not going to, for 1 second, they're going to sit there and have in their head like, oh, I'm going to do this workout. I'm going to make you do crunches. What you're doing is inviting the person to say, how do you like actually working out? Like what is it that you actually enjoy about how companies work with you? What is the workouts that you like doing? Do you like swimming? Do you like running? Do you like cardio? Do you like weightlifting? You're giving the person the opportunity before you pitch to actually express how they want to be served. That's all it is. Does that mean you're going to follow that? No, but these signals are going to come even more golden when you pitch, because rather than guessing what they want, they're going to be telling you. But the way you're asking the question is simply being like, look, if we were overcoming this specific problem that you've mentioned that's costing you £600 a month because you want to consistently remind them, drill that specific point in, how would you want us to kind of start about and going about doing this? Do you have kind of like timeline expectations? Yeah, we want to try getting started on this. Do you notice it's a lot more of a softer way compared to just saying, when do you want to get started? So again, you're collecting all the information, such as things that might be in the way, things that they need to work for, all of these different things in there. Now, once I've got this, and this is information more about the system itself, how you're actually going to do delivery, I'm then going to push on to pretty much the vision stage. Now, the vision stage is everything I told you earlier on, everything when we were at this part was talking about their world. I want to talk about now the future. I want to get a really good understanding of what life will look like if you say yes. What's it going to look like tomorrow coming in and that problem no longer existing? People think that a company will just buy based off the person and the hours that you've saved. But let's use this as an example. Let's say that I've got this person here. We're going to call him Larry. Larry is our 50k guy that's costing them £26 per hour. Now, I need the company not just to realise that they're going to save £600 per hour. I need them to realise that Larry is now a free man. Larry can go off and do whatever he wants. Larry can do the job that you've probably been looking at for the last 3 years and not been able to do because you haven't had the resource. You haven't wanted to hire someone else because maybe they've not understood your business, or maybe that they're just too expensive a skill set. Larry can now do those tasks. And let's say that that task itself brings in £1,000 a month. Now, every business that you deal with effectively wants to be treating every employee as if they're going to be giving something or adding to that big number in the revenue. Whether it's time or whether it's the salesperson bringing more money in, you want to try making sure that if they're there for an hour, they're making money for the company. The second that a business just has people sat around for just the sake of being sat around, you've got to look at it and reframe it to them that that's just literally throwing money down the drain. Everyone's got to be there for a specific task allocated to growth. But what I've been able to do is not just now save them 600, but I've been able to make them 400. Well, 1,000, but £400 difference in between the two. The reason this is gold is the fact that that actually doesn't necessarily mean it's just an extra £400 a month that they've gained in their pocket, but actually it's a job and a task that might help other people out. It might grow other areas of the business. This is the intelligent conversation you want to have an understanding of what is good. Like, what is it about fixing this problem that is worth actually spending money on fixing? The reason it's good now is that if you followed the structure of the conversation the same way that I've taught it, you've exposed a problem. You've made the problem big. You've now got into the things that they've done about the problem, if they've tried fixing it or they haven't fixed it. You've identified the pattern. You've made the problem so big at this stage that they want to see it and they want to do something about it. Now you want to collect what the future looks like. If you think about it, and this is what sales is, you've created something like the gap, where they are and where they want to go. You very much kind of connected those two areas together by you being the solution in the middle. You are the bridge between the gap. I'm sure there's a nice metaphor or story for that, but it is the metaphor. But you are very much going to fill that gap so your clients can be a lot happier with it. Make sure if you can, again, try and get a number associated to it, because as a business, when you're in the business to business world, people buy numbers and logic. They don't buy emotions. But you can get a feeling, happy days, but you really want to try and find it out. I like to kind of ask extra layered questions. What would this do for the team? What would this do for other people, you fixing this problem? What would this make Barry feel like? Try and get, like the problem, the more time you spend with it, the more questions you ask, the bigger it gets. The outcome, the more you talk about it and get other people involved, the better it is. People are selfish, don't get me wrong, but people also are good out there. And sometimes when you express that you can actually make someone's life easier, a company will try and do it if they can do it and they can see a logical financial sense to do so. They won't just be doing this because, hey, we're making more money. They'll do it because, hey, we're making Larry's life a little bit easier. Cool. So once we've got an idea now, we've created the gap, we've got real good progress here as a discovery call. I would say now I'm typically at the 30-minute stage here. I've managed to cover the vision section. I've managed to cover the alignment section, and now I'm getting to the last stages of where I'm kind of getting to stage where I want to pitch. Right at this point, I call this the point of no return. So now I've got an idea, we've painted the journey. I'm going to do one last objection handling check just before I get into anything else. What I'm going to ask them is this: is there anything else I should know before going into my bit? Why this question is clever is it's going to pull out the actual objection that they've been thinking about for the last 10 minutes of the conversation, but they've not been brave enough just to peek up and say. Hopefully you've dissected them in a really good way from following these structures and everything that's involved. You've asked them questions, you've dived into things, you've tried making things quantifiable. You've got the feelings, the associated with the costs, what they're going to be doing with it, all of the different areas that we've broken down and explained. Now I've got to a point where I would just be like, cool, we've discussed everything about you. We're now going to talk about me. We're going to get into how I can help you. But before I do that, is there anything else I need to know? People that typically say something now will be kind of similar to that early resistance. They'll go on about price. They'll go on about they'll go on about an excuse. Oh, cool. Could you just tell me this specific point? Can you just tell me about how you are going to come in and do this? When can you start? This information is golden. This is literally like they're telling you the buying signals or the non-buying signals, so collect it. And you've invited a really safe space to collect that information right now. Do not skip over this point. Try and collect that information, because that's the first bit you're going to answer with your pitch. So if they say something, for example, being like, when can you start? I'm quizzing that straight away, going, cool, I can go into that in a moment, but why is it important to know that? Is there anything that I need to know beforehand regarding the start date? Is there any deadlines, anything at all that you need to know that's important for me to know to do that? If they say something regarding cost, appreciate you said that, and thanks for kind of, again, highlighting it and just answering the question. What is it about costs that you kind of want to know? I just need to know how expensive it is. I can get into that and we can run through exactly what I can offer for you. Is there anything I need to know about costs or anything like that at all regarding this? If they start talking about budgets and everything now, happy days. I've got the information that I've probably tried digging for that they've not wanted to tell me, but because I've been competent in enough of how I've handled myself and dissected everything that they've wanted, I've got to a really good stage now where I can really kind of help them out. And they've let their guard down, that they're probably going to be a bit more opening. I've been able to disarm them now, in them thinking that I'm not just someone who's sat in their bedroom building a company. I'm someone who's competent. I've done this before. I've got a good line of questioning. I've really dissected them. I've peeled the layers back And now we've got a really clear understanding of the problem, the money associated, and actually the intent of trying to get it fixed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to collect all this information. And at this point is where we're going to talk about the outcomes that we discussed earlier on. So it's really important at this stage that we don't really pitch too early, but we also don't pitch to someone that's not right. At this point, you need to make an independent decision based on where you are as a company and sitting there thinking, cool, I'm going to either be able to help this person, which means that I'm going to go for the audit or the sale. I'm going to be able, or I'm going to say no, basically. And I've got my no-goes. If it's a no-go, just politely say, look, based on what you said, I can kind of run into how we could help, but I'll be honest, I don't think we'd be able to do so. If it's going to be the audit or the sale, it's really important to open your pitch with this statement, so they're aligned and they know exactly what you're going to do. So I'm going to say thank you very much, first of all, for giving me that information and help, and opening up and telling me everything that you are at, where you're at with the business. For us to take you from now, meaning like you're going to say the problem and be clear about it, meaning like go into detail. From us to go from where at the moment you're losing £600 a month on a staff member doing a task that could be automated, that's actually costing you a bigger impact overall with ABC or whatever it is. You want to be detailed as possible about the problem. To the future that they said. And then be detailed about that as well. And then I go into something called a 3-pillar or a 3-stage approach. Now, my handwriting's going all over the place. Right, I've been doing so well. Doesn't look right. We'll go with it. I want to go into a 3-stage approach. I want to make it very, very clear that I'm going to help them out and it's going to feel like a solution now for them, not a solution for everyone, because I've mentioned their specific problem and I've mentioned their specific goals that they want to achieve. I'm not making it sound like a blanket option. I want to make it sound right for them. If you've got a product sale, I can help out with that in another video. It's going to be exactly the same, but you just want to make it that the product feels like it's been kind of made specifically for them. But if it's a service, you want to make it very clear you're explaining where they want to go, where they are and where they want to go. The 3-stage approach, if you're going for an audit, now you're not selling the solution, you're selling the need of an audit and then the solution afterwards. So point number 1 is going to be the audit. Point number 2 and point number 3 is going to ideally be the buying signal or behavior that they requested earlier on. And what I mean by that is, remember when we were talking to them about the alignment stages, where you said, how would we want to work? You're just going to bring and resurface those specific points and why they're important to them. Whenever I say something, I want to get confirmation from them. They believe that's something going to help. So I'm going to say, look, we're going to work with you over the next couple of weeks. And we're going to implement a solution that's going to stop doing this specific thing. You mentioned communication was important to you, so we'll have a weekly update. Is that something you feel like you'd want? So I'm getting a mini kind of buy-in after every single point. The next stage I'm going to be doing is the same. The buying signal that they wanted or behavior that they wanted. The reason this is important is now I've got a really good idea of making my service attached to the outcomes that they specifically want. Remember, people buy outcomes, and realistically, these 2 points here should be really selling on the focus of the outcome, the vision, the bit that they want as the future of things going well. With the audit, it's very much going to be the same, but you need to sell the value of the audit. So therefore that they know that this is just part of the process to actually get the outcome that they want. The audit, it's really important that they need to believe it's just like something for everything that you would do. If you think about it, I'm sat in an extension right now. It's a really nice extension, but this wasn't bought because someone just rocked up on the driveway with their tools and started building it. There was a stage beforehand that someone had to come out, had to literally measure everything, look at everything, nice bifolding windows, had to quote everything up and then present it back to me. Why did they do this? Well, without this, I'd have been really annoyed, because what would have happened is I would have consistently been paying for something, not knowing the price, or there probably would have been a worse scenario, which is that they would have quoted me and then come back asking for more money, which I think they did anyways. But my point being said, you want to paint the picture to them. The audit's a benefit for them, so you can fully identify everything involved and you can accurately price and quote something up. So what typically happens is, once you've said this, there'll be some resistance of just being, can you not just quote the work for us and just do it right now? Again, I use the analogy. When you go to the garage, your car's broken, they never give you a price. They'll always tell you to sit in the waiting room area for 45 minutes or to go off and come back. Then they'll give you a price because they actually understand the problem, the labor, parts, and everything that's involved. Your process is exactly the same. You don't do that for your benefit, you do it for their benefit. Once I've said these 3 points, I then, as I said, if I'm dealing with a product, I'm going into price. If I'm going into the audit, I'm also going into price. So I'm going to explain right there and then the cost involved for the audit, which ideally, it depends on an individual. That's a separate video for another day. But I want to make sure that I'm getting paid for the audit and I'm getting some level of micro commitment that they believe I can overcome their problems and that they're inviting me into the business to overcome the problem. They're not inviting me in just to do a free check and then make a decision afterwards. You've got to realize that you want the sale on the discovery call to feel like the sale of the whole thing, because they're agreeing to work with you to fix the problem. They're not just getting you on board to try and get them kind of like to look into it, for them not to really have any skin in the game, for them to look at that audit, pay interest, just tick a box and move on. What I'll do now is I'll say this is kind of the end of the discovery call process. You might get objection handling, which I'll stick into another video because that's an entirely different beast itself. But hopefully this has been a really good detailed breakdown of how to do a discovery call. It's the first ever video I've done on YouTube, so hopefully you found it really useful, but I wanted to give as much information as possible. Like everything, there's more layers to the onion. So with all of these points, there's different ways you can do everything. If you want to find out a really good breakdown of this, I've actually put in the description a bunch of free stuff that you can look at and put into your LLMs that will help you analyze your own calls. On top of that, I've also got an app that you can put your own calls in. It will analyze it as if my methodology is in there, and you can learn at that at a very low cost. Anything else, let me know. But thanks for watching.